So, yep, cool. Well, we're here with Anthony Agius from the Sizzle. Is that what you would refer to yourself as your biggest kind of project at the moment? Is your daily newsletter?
At the moment, yeah. But most people who might be watching this might actually know me from a while ago, maybe about 10 years ago, from a thing called MacTalk, which was a largish Apple forum, and that's kind of what, when I was in my 20s, what I did with my time, and that kind of set me up for the things that I do now. So
cool.
Yeah, MacTalk's where I've got a lot of friends and stuff as well. So
yeah, sweet. So, all right. Well, who is Anthony Agius anyway? Tell me a little bit about yourself. How would you explain yourself and what you do?
I pretty much write about computers or babysit computers. I'm either writing about them or looking after them. That's pretty much what I've done since I could read.
Yep.
Since my parents bought me a computer when I was 12 or 13.
Yep.
Since then, it's just been that's it. Like, I've been obsessed with it. Nothing else has taken my interest.
Really?
That's just been I've been lucky enough to have that passion, something that I've stuck with for this long, and it's been good to me. Yeah,
right. Well, why would you say that is? Like, what was your background like? What drew to computing, and what fired you up about it?
I mean, I think for me, particularly in like the late 90s and the early 2000s, was being able to kind of be a weirdo without being a weirdo in public. Particularly the internet allowed me to kind of be who I was without any kind of strings attached, without kind of criticism from like people who maybe your friends at school or or family, and why would you care about that, or why would you want to know about that? And the internet allowed me to kind of be who I am. Particularly, people can see me in the camera. I'm not, I'm not a good a talker. I mean, my natural habitat is writing.
Yep.
So being that kind of face-to-face social interaction was never a strong point. The internet allowed me to benefit. It allowed me to express who I am and what I can do without having to.
Your thoughts.
Yeah, without having to be, stand up in front of people and talk and things like that. So that's been kind of why it captured me so much at first. And as I get older, I've realized that's been good to me.
Yep.
And as more people use the internet, it's been a way to kind of but to play to my strengths rather than go somewhere where I'm going to have to start from scratch or build up a skill or a talent. I know what I can and can't do.
Yeah, you lean into what you enjoy, what you feel comcomfortable with, and what you're good at. That's cool. I mean, that's very...
some people say you should go outside that comfort zone.
Yeah.
But I've tried it and it sucked. So
I have something I want to come back to, but I actually have a buddy who used to be the co-host on the... I wanted to ask you about that in a sec. But I had a co-host on the podcast, and he was always... one of my great friends still to this day, and he was always wanting to conquer his fears and take himself right out of his comfort zone. And like if you were Tommy, he would be I was never really comfortable with public speaking, so I had to do it every day, right, till I got amazing at it. And I was always like, why? In all due respect to Tommy, like I just
didn't him for facing that and trying to, but I think for most people, it's kind of like you try because you think that's what you should be doing. You try and it's like, this is actually really uncomfortable. It kind of hurts. The natural thing to do is not to keep on not hurting yourself, but just going through that uncomfortableness and that non-familiar territory. And it's like, well, most people just kind of stop and don't do that, and hopefully they find what they're good at and what they can be comfortable at.
Yeah, lean into it a little bit. Yeah,
and I think I have found it.
Yeah.
But some people don't, and that's unfortunate. Some people fight through that uncomfortable and find what they actually are good at and become good at it, and that's great as well.
Yeah. I just think, and I think it is good challenging yourself for sure. I've challenged myself in heaps of different ways, and I used to hate public speaking, and now I'm okay at it. I've done it a handful of times, but that's an example of that. Yeah. Probably everyone's biggest example is public speaking, the most hated thing that they never want to do. So, and I like self-development and everything. It was just such and me and Tommy have discussed this on a number of occasions, but it was a very, very like line in the sand. This is a fear, I must conquer it. And I was just like, I don't think you do have to.
I mean, for some things, like if you're afraid of flying, for example, like that's going to be kind of an issue. For
it's going to hamper your ability to live your life a little bit.
Yeah, you can't do the things that you want to do. And I think that's when you should get over that.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
There's nothing that I haven't been able to want to do that I've been stopped doing, so it hasn't really been an issue. Yeah,
I would just think, and I said it before, I think what I would say is you're leaning into your strengths and something that you feel that you're good at.
Yes.
And that's cool. So So you said earlier that it allowed you to be a weirdo on the internet.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I guess it's not really a normal thing for just say like a 13-year-old kid to just like, back then at least, to enjoy video games a lot.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, oh guys, I don't play footy or something
Yeah.
like that. Which I like football,
Yeah.
but I never like playing it much. The boys
Yeah.
were just too rough, and
Yeah.
I'd hurt myself, and
Yeah.
I was just crap at football.
Yeah.
But I still love watching it. I'm a
Yeah.
massive Kangaroos fan. I'll go to all the games and
Yeah.
watch it on TV. But playing it was just a whole different thing than watching it, and that was, that was perceived as like weird. Like you didn't
Yeah.
do the things that everyone else did.
Yeah.
And like, I preferred to play video games. I preferred to listen to like loud, weird music. Like,
Yeah.
Back then would have been like Nirvana or
loud,
Marconi.
weird music.
Nirvana,
one of the most popular bands in the last 50 years.
But as a 13-year-old kid in like suburban Melbourne, whose parents didn't speak English very well,
Yeah.
and that just wasn't a thing that you did.
Yeah, fair enough. Where are your parents from?
Malta.
Malta. Gotcha.
Yes, so
Interesting.
they came after. They came after World War II.
Right.
And came to Melbourne, and it's been very good to them as well.
So they came, and then how much later were you born once they immigrated?
Well, I was born in 1984. So
Yeah.
they came after like their
So they were pretty settled. They'd been over for decades.
yeah they came
gotcha.
as children.
Yes.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. Cool. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So you started to get a love when you were younger. It allowed you to be a weirdo and do the things that you liked and so on and so forth. But then obviously there's a gap there in between, like when you were a 13-year-old kid. Gap in my understanding. I mean, when you're a 13-year-old kid and when you're a tech journalist, I guess.
To now, essentially.
To now, yeah. So how do you actually make a career out of something like that?
Yeah,
a passion like that?
You kind of I fell into it really. It wasn't really a choice, a plan. And the plan for me when I finished school was, all right, I'm good at computers. People who use computers get paid a lot of money. Stick with that path and you'll do fine. And I did that. I went to TAFE at first. Did fine there. Went to uni. Totally hated it. Didn't fit the way that learning style was. But then ended up working at the uni that I dropped out of, looking after the computers there. So that was. I knew enough to do good work.
Yeah.
And I did that for a few years, and it's like this isn't. It was more interesting communicating with people who like the same things that I like.
Yeah.
So that's when MacTalk started, maybe 2005, 2004. That's when I was just on the internet. There was nowhere for people who were into Apple products and Australians to discuss this. So a friend and I started it as like a splinter off an existing forum called Overclockers Australia.
Yep.
And that's a big...
Called what?
Overclockers Australia.
Overclockers.
Yep. So that's about...
What does that mean?
There's people who... You get a computer, you make it run faster than it was supposed to run.
Right. That's overclocking.
Yep.
Yeah. I knew there would be a term like what that reference... I wanted to know what that reference was.
So those people... At the time, that was pretty much the only Australian place to discuss tech stuff. There was a forum, back then would have been maybe 15, 20,000 people, which back then on the internet was a fair bit of people.
Yeah, for sure.
But the Apple stuff that I cared about, and maybe like a dozen other people cared about, there wasn't a space for that. They would, the PC guys would make fun of us, like, oh, who cares about that? And it's not an important thing. But then we built our own, and it went well. Other people found out because they had the same interest, and that built up. And as Apple grew, because back then Apple was not Apple we know today. They were on their deathbed, essentially.
Yeah.
Like they were. Like people didn't think that they would exist anymore.
Oh, really? Which year? When was this exactly?
The early 2000s.
So really? So right before the iPod?
Yes.
Really? They were on their deathbed?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Back in the 90s, Microsoft gave Apple a loan, and that saved them because
Microsoft gave Apple a loan?
Yes. So
because they were...
Because the theory at the time was Microsoft at that time was being accused of antitrust stuff with Windows and bundling Windows with PCs. And forcing people to have Windows with the PC even though they didn't want Windows with their PC. So they thought, look, if there's no competitor to Windows, then the government has a case against us that we are the only competition. So they thought, look, it's smart for us to give Apple half $500 million, which for them at the time was for Apple was a lot of money.
I had no idea about this.
Yeah, for Microsoft it was almost pocket change. And that kept their competitor alive, so that they had a valid competitor to justify to the government, hey, we're not a monopolist, we're not killing off our competitors. See, look, they exist, but that also got Steve Jobs back at the company because he left the company in the 80s. Started Pixar. And Next. And then he came back with that investment, convinced Bill Gates to give him the money, and
Oh, really?
Then there was first was the iMac, then the iPod, then the iPhone.
Just a number of world-changing technologies in about the space of a 10-year span.
Yeah, and as
Pretty
Apple,
much.
And as Apple grew, my little website, MacTalk grew.
Yep.
And it was more and more people bought these things. They either wanted to know how to use them because they were new to them, or loved it so much they wanted to share that passion with other people. And it grew and managed to sell that to a magazine publishing company called a Niche Media who are based in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a nice bit of money for me to kind of do at that time whatever I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. So just on the just on the Microsoft and Apple thing.
Yep.
So they gave them $500 million.
Yes.
So because of the monopoly, so it was Microsoft forcing people to use Windows.
Yep.
So they wanted Apple to stay alive because Apple run their own system, and that's the exact same thing, even more so. Because you can run. No, you can't.
You can run Windows on a Mac now, but back then they used a whole different architecture. Microsoft didn't write Windows for the hardware that Apple used.
Gotcha.
So when you bought a Mac back then, it came with Mac OS, and that was what you had to use. There was no way to run Windows on it. So, and Microsoft also made software like Office and Internet Explorer at the time for Apple.
Yep.
And that was, again, Office was another thing. People thought it's such a popular piece of software. You've killed off the competitors like Lotus and Borland, which no one knows who now.
History forgets them.
But by making it for a different platform, it kind of gave the illusion at least, hey, look, there's choice. Please don't sue us. Please don't break us up.
Yeah, right.
And it ended up, they got in trouble for it, but Microsoft wasn't broken up. They had to do some things with Windows to make it like you had to unbundle Internet Explorer.
Yep.
And in Europe, it was a lot more things had to be taken out of Windows to be available as a separate program.
Gotcha.
And that's still the case now with Google and Android. And they've had to recently, just the past few weeks, in Europe, they have to, when you set up your phone, by default, you have Google as a search engine.
Yep.
It's a Google device, Google thing. You have to make it now so that when the phone loads up, there's like a random choice of other search engines.
Oh, really?
So you can pick Bing or DuckDuckGo or different ones, because the European Union was like, hey, this is obviously, you're forcing customers to use it. There's no one else has a chance to compete.
Yep.
And the exact same thing that happened to Microsoft back then is happening now to Google, because they're just so massive, and it's just not fair for the smaller guys to compete.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. I have a question.
Yes.
So while we're talking about Microsoft versus Apple, are you a Mac or a
Definitely
PC
now,
man?
Mac. I mean, I use both.
Yep.
At home, I've got a PC laptop, Windows laptop, and a Mac desktop.
Yep.
But definitely, I prefer the Mac, and that's kind of what. Again, I've been using it now for so long. It's just where I'm comfortable. It's what I like using. But I can use both, and I think for now the difference is a lot less, because now everything's online. There's way less need for picking one or the other unless you've got a specific need for it. Most people can use either one and be happy with it now.
Gotcha. All right, cool. So you sold MacTalk. So this is 10 years ago, so mid-20s, roundabout, something like that.
Yeah.
And then what? Then what happened?
Yeah, then I started a conference called One More Thing, which was at the time helping, because at the time the iPhone just came out, and when the iPhone first came out, there were no apps. Apps were just not a thing. Apple thought, all right, we're just going to have websites. So you can build websites designed for the iPhone and bookmark them on the homepage, but not like a native, like the way they are now.
So this is the iPhone, the first iPhone.
Yep.
So what features did the first iPhone have?
Well,
if you're looking at like icons, like because they had icons, right? Icons app icons.
Yeah,
it was their own apps though.
Correct.
There was just no app store and external developers.
Correct.
Yes, gotcha.
And if you wanted to make apps or software for the iPhone, you had to
get a job at Apple
or make a website.
Gotcha.
So Apple had specific things in their web browser that would make it feel like a normal app.
Yep.
But the developers were like, this is not the same. It's like, give us access to it.
Yep.
And Steve Jobs never really wanted to. He was like,
really?
No, we don't want the device to be slowed down. They didn't trust developers to make proper apps, because at the time, I don't know if you remember, there was things like the Palm Pilot,
I remember.
Windows Mobile CE, which was like the Windows phones. and they were just garbage apps which slowed the phone down.
Yeah. Well, you're giving the quality of the user experience across to somebody else.
Exactly.
If you've got 10 Apple apps and 50 other people's apps, you really are putting yourself at the behest of the of the field.
Apple never wanted to do that. But
you can kind of see why.
Yeah. But now, in hindsight, with how popular the App Store has been, it's like, all right, that was the right decision.
Oh, for sure.
But at the time, it wasn't really like a thing that Apple thought would be popular. They did it to appease their hardcore fans, the developers, and ended up being like a mega billion-dollar business. Or just the App Store.
For sure, 100%. So this was one more thing. So this is your conference.
I was confident about making apps for the phone. Because at the time it was great, because when it first came out, the only people who really cared about making apps were Apple fans, really, because they had been making apps for the Mac in the past, and they're like, well, I want to make my own apps for this new Apple product, which is great, and I love this too. So the apps that came out were usually made by like one or two people in a small office, and they made fortunes.
Really?
Yeah, because there was no apps. So you had open world. Apple at that time had sold hundreds of millions of phones. Yeah. But there were no apps. So if you were first to release your apps, you had a great
huge
chance.
Market.
And the Mac developers had an advantage because they knew how to make software for Apple products already. It wasn't much of a leap to make things for the phone. And that conference was about making apps on your own. So we got developers from around Australia, and some in the later years, developers from overseas to discuss how they started from basically nothing, from being a guy in a bedroom or a woman in a bedroom, to making millions of dollars. These apps. Because I felt at the time, those are the best apps made by people who care and are good at their skill, not a mega company with
you have to go through 55 gatekeepers to get anything done, and the creativity gets watered down.
So we wanted to really kind of encourage that, and we did it for 3 years. We did it for 3 years. It didn't make any money, but we had fun doing it. We learned a lot, because I've never done a conference before.
You would have made a lot of contacts, which are useful always in the future life and business and so forth.
But that was a good learning experience. It was fun, but it didn't make any money. So after 3 years, like, all right, it's not making any money. Time to move on. And then I just went back to work and normal. Job.
So let me ask you this. So in all your, with one more thing, and your obviously history and tech commentary, what are some of the greatest app stories that you've heard? Like a weird, strange just app that just took off, or is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, there's guys in South Australia called Shifty Jelly.
Shifter Jelly?
Yep. And they made an app called Pocket Weather. Yeah. And another app called Pocket Casts.
Pocket Weather?
Pocket Weather and Pocket Casts.
Yeah.
And they literally were just like...
That's just the weather app, right? The Australian weather app? Yep. I think I have Pocket Weather, or I had it.
You probably do.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it stopped working at the start of this year because they couldn't afford to pay the Barrier Meteorology, the licensing fees.
Right.
So, because which is kind of one of the, not mistakes, but that's just how it was back when apps first started. You pay for the app and that was it.
Yep.
And customers expected that the app would never cost money again.
Yeah.
So you built it.
$1.49 or whatever, and that was it.
So they charged US 99 cents, which is $1.20 here, back 10 years ago.
Yep.
Never saw a dime again from their customers but they had to keep the app going for
all
this
time. That's so crazy, isn't it?
And then they reached a limit where there's only so many Australians who care about weather who want to pay for an app on their phone. So you're going to hit the peak mark, and they're like, well, we have to end it now because...
The lifetime value of a customer is $1.29.
Yeah, which is why you see so many apps that have a subscription fee now.
Rather than right. I've never seen subscription apps. Oh, I guess I have. Audible is a subscription app.
Yeah, or they're free.
Of course, well, I have a subscription app.
Yeah, or the app's free and there's ads, and that's how they make.
Actually, I've got heaps of subscription apps. I just realised.
There's lots of that's Sizzle. A subscription app is the only really way you can get that sustained income for long. Because if you expect the app to be constantly developed and changed and updated, that costs money. It's not just a one-off.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So, and then these weather guys, were they stuck around for a decade or whatever?
They're still around.
But that was from
about 2005, 2006.
Yeah.
Until now they got purchased by NPR.
Oh, really?
For their Pocket Cast apps. So they made a podcast app very early on. They were one of the first podcast apps. They made up an app for podcasts.
Yeah.
Because the iPhone never had a podcast app for many, many years later.
Yeah.
So it took them until 2013, 14 for an actual podcast app to be on the phone itself. So you had to get a third-party app.
Right.
And Pocket Cast was the best one, and it was made in Australia. The guys who made it just there were 2 or 3 people, and they made enough to have all of them had a nice living. It was a sustainable business, and then NPR purchased them.
Yep.
I assume they had a lot of money, hopefully, and now they're working on what they love to do, which is making software. So
cool.
That's really that success story of them is what I would. With one more thing, I wanted more of those businesses.
Yeah.
And some happened, but ultimately that's not how it really ended up. It's been like every other business. There's been a lot of big businesses coming together, making 150 million apps.
Yeah.
Or they are VC funded and they can run for free for years.
Or they just buy up all
years.
the little apps before they even really get much traction. Like NPR is a good example of me being a podcaster and a huge podcast listener. I've noticed NPR, Spotify, iHeartRadio, who else? Stitcher, yeah. All buying podcast networks and apps and so forth. Yeah, and Spotify. Yeah. Spotify pouring billions of dollars into podcasting. And so it's interesting that these guys had their app bought. I'm not surprised. I've heard, because I'll read lots of the podcasting reports and stuff, yearly reports and what have you. So, yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. So, and then now, shortly, I really want to swing into some of these really big questions I've got that are just more broad range stuff. And now you're what would be your main focus now? Is just so you're still just employed in the industry, and then you're working with and doing the Sizzle. Yeah.
Also, when I finished up one more thing, I went overseas for about 3 months.
Yep.
Went around the world.
Cool.
Which was nice because another funny story. NAB had an offer. I got like $1.5 million freaking flyer points from a credit card hack thing.
Full on. So flipping them.
Kinda. I mean, they had an offer. You got 100 points per transaction.
Yeah, right.
And I said, does that include 1 cent transactions?
Yeah.
And they're like, any transaction? I'm like, okay, thank you. So I managed to find a way to automate 1 cent transactions.
Yeah, auto charge yourself.
And I managed to get 1.5 million points until now realised, look, we're going to cut you off. We'll give you the points.
Really?
But no more from now on.
What's 1.5 million points get you?
2 round-the-world trips in first class.
What? In first class?
Yes. So that's what me and my wife did.
Oh, my God.
We did that after I finished up one more thing for the first time.
Oh, that's a classic.
And then I came back and thought, after one, I actually went straight into like a contract job, just babysitting some computers, some Linux computers, sitting at a desk, making sure they don't catch fire, essentially.
Yeah.
And that paid well, but it was so boring.
Yeah.
Then when I came back from overseas, like, well, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what is there that I want that doesn't exist? And I read so much tech news, and it's all just so much of it. How does anyone who has a job and responsibilities and a family keep up with this while still
a nice curated, professional, reliable source of tech news?
Because again, it's just really hard to keep up.
Yeah.
And if you don't keep up, you end up being that old guy in the corner who hasn't changed, who's not up to date with stuff, and it's an embarrassment.
You're playing Snake on the 8210.
Yeah, well, that's
at the tech conference.
Well, yeah, that's every kind of tech guy's fear, is to be that guy that you, when you were young, thinking, why does that guy not know this? Why does he not know about this? And I hope that the Sizzle kind of does that. Instead of you reading all the tech news, I read it for you and tell you what's actually important, so you can spend 20 minutes, half an hour max reading this instead of having to spend 2-3 hours reading everything. Yeah, cool. Every day. And
that's great.
Yeah, that's been good so far.
Yeah, sweet. So I noticed. So the Sizzle is. I'm a subscriber, but I'm on the free plan at the moment.
Yeah, that's once a week instead. So
yes. So I noticed. So you've got the subscription model set up for the Sizzle. So how's it working out? Like, is it providing? Is it an income at the moment? It's building towards an income. It's
I've got 630 paid subscribers.
Oh, that's great.
So I've been doing that for almost 5 years now. So it's taken a long time to build that up. I've been lucky enough that I've had my wife works, and I've had money, and I've been able to scrounge enough freelance writing work from other outlets. Supplement the growing of the subscription. Oh, that's great. So at the moment, it's kind of where it used to be mostly freelance writing and my wife's income. It's now kind of evened out a bit, where it sustains itself. Obviously, more would be nicer, because it costs the same for one person or a million people. Of course. It's the same kind of cost to make the product.
But you've done the hard work.
Yes.
The hard work is probably that first 5-year period. Now you've got a somewhat, not just the whole life sustainable income, but the next 5 years you'd imagine that'd be, miles above.
Well, I
which
hope
should be
that,
really great.
I hope that because most of it's been like word of mouth. People don't leave. Like once they start paying, they pretty much don't
really
discussion because they enjoy it.
Great.
It becomes part of their. I will hope that the way that I write it and the way that I come across, people are like, this is like a friend. I don't want to cancel a friend.
Yeah, for sure. It's like a lot of my favourite podcasts.
Yes.
You know, they're free and they're very well monetized because of the podcast model. Yeah. Most of them, but if some of the guys that I listen to, if they were like $20 a month now, I'd be like,
I'd be like it so much.
I'd be like, you bastard. Here's my credit card, because they are friends and they're like, it's well, like
you hit them in your ears. It's quite an intimate.
Oh, very much medium. Very much so. It's actually funny because I listened to this guy started with one podcast, but he's now got three. He's an ex-UFC fighter. Okay. His name's Brendan Schaub. And he's got a podcast called The Fighter and the Kid, which is him. He's now a stand-up comedian, but him and one of his stand-up comedian buddies. So The Fighter and the Kid. And then he's got one that's a UFC breakdown one, which is just him. And then he's got one with another comedian who's fucking hilarious, Theo Von. So he's got three podcasts. And I've been listening to him for years, and I've heard his voice in my ears so much, and he's just a real nice guy, whatever. And I don't know him, obviously. I don't know him from Brolosophy.
But you feel like you do, because I mean, when I was running a MacTalk, we had a podcast which was quite popular.
Yeah. And
this was back when no one listened to podcasts. This was like 2006, 2007.
Ricky Gervais shows
pretty much
times.
Yeah. And I had people, I'd be on the train talking on the phone to my mum or to my wife, and it'd be like, excuse me, do I know Anthony from the MacTalk podcast? Yeah. I'm like, yes. Like, it's nice to meet you. And people knew about my life. Yeah. Asking me how things are.
Well, I have it a little bit too, because I've got this show, obviously. But with Brendan Schaub, it was hilarious because I went to the US with a buddy, the guy who I used to host this podcast with, and I was thinking to myself, actually, I wasn't really thinking this. I was thinking this after this happened. But I was thinking after, I was like, I wonder who the top 3 or 4 people, if I was to just bump into someone in the US would be. And it'd be LeBron James, Joe Rogan, Joe Rogan, and Brendan Schaub would probably be third or at least in the top 5. Okay. And anyway, so we got off the plane, and then we got in an Uber, but we didn't really speak to the Uber driver very much. We didn't really look anyone in the face from like the airport to my mate's house, which was a gym actually, and he had a room he'd set up for us. From there, we walked straight. He didn't even check us in. He just gave us the code. We walked straight to the supermarket to buy some lunch. We might have walked past 1 or 2 people. We literally walked up the stairs, and the first person I walked straight directly into face to face, and it's Brendan Schaub. And I literally went, his nickname's Big Brown, and I turned the corner and I go, and I did it like I'd seen an old friend. I was like, Big Brown! And he goes, hey man, and I was like, fuck, he doesn't know me.
It's with that relationship.
But he was great. Yeah. He was a great bloke. Like we had an awesome chat. He was super outgoing and really nice, and he was a fucking legend, to be honest. But it was funny. Same thing happened to me with Eddie Maguire in Sorrento about 10 years earlier. I just walked around the corner of this supermarket aisle, and I was like, g'day Eddie, and then I was like, he goes, g'day mate, and I said, sweet, forgot. That's great. So you're in the podcasting game early days. I listened to podcasts from day one. I listened to the Ricky Gervais show.
I enjoyed that too, but Ricky Gervais is, I don't know, now, all right, we've seen enough.
It's the Golden Globe stuff.
Yeah, there's not a lot of new material there. Listen to what he's doing back in 10 years ago. All right, it's funny then. I've heard it before. Yeah. I think he's creatively the greatest creative on the planet. But I don't particularly love his stand-up. I like it. I think it's all right. My favourite stand-up was him. He was in Grand Theft Auto 5.
Oh, yeah.
So at 4, there was a room you could go with the characters into a club.
Ricky Gervais was in it.
Yeah, and he did like a whole hour of comedy in this game.
Oh, really?
And you can sit there as a character and watch Ricky Gervais do comedy.
What?
Yeah.
Really? That's classic.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. He's my favourite creative on the planet. I don't mind his stand-up. I think it's good. And I've liked most of what he's done at the Golden Globes. Pretty much all of it. Although this year I saw a couple of things, and he was taking the piss out of like the rich and famous and so forth, and he's rich and famous as well. But anyway, I love him. I just The Office, Extras, An Idiot Abroad, anything that he's created, him and Steve Merchant, I've just they're all my favourite shows and movies. He's only done one movie, but that he's created, not starting. Anyway, enough about Ricky Gervais, I guess. But yeah, cool. All right, sweet. So, well, we'll probably go in and out of your life story and bits and pieces around this,
Sure.
Anthony. But I want to ask you some big questions in tech. And as I said earlier, it might be some of it might be very much like bordering on futurism. But that's cool. I don't expect you to.
It's fun because I can make up whatever I want, and no one will know if it comes true or not.
Yeah,
so
that's
if
right.
If it does, great. If it doesn't, well, I was wrong.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, I have a number of different questions written down here, and I'm probably starting with the biggest or second biggest of these 6 things that I've jotted down. So, artificial intelligence.
Yes. Yeah.
So, obviously, it's a concept that not very long ago was probably science fiction. People have been saying that it's coming through the is it Moore's law?
Moore's law is more to do with the amount of transistors on a CPU.
Yes.
Artificial intelligence is the aim is to have general artificial intelligence. That's the kind of true a brain in a CPU kind of thing.
Yes.
That is debatable.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the big one.
Yeah, I guess where I didn't finish my sentence. I guess where I was saying was due to Moore's law, it's always been said that at some point computers' processing power should catch up to the processing power of the human brain.
Okay.
And then obviously, well, I'll just shut up in a sec. But artificial intelligence. Do you think it's on the horizon? Do you believe in artificial intelligence first? And if so, when and what would it look like, do you think?
I think at the moment, artificial intelligence, most of the demonstrations that you see are just fancy, lists. And because computers are getting faster and faster, it can sort through that list of a billion different choices faster than a human can, or faster than it can before, and it can look like artificial intelligence. Many products that claim to have artificial intelligence don't. There's a person on the other end, like Ring, the Ring doorbells for the Amazon doorbells. A lot of their AI facial features was actually a team in Ukraine who would watch videos live and say, there's a person there.
Really?
So a lot of that stuff doesn't necessarily be true.
Phony.
Artificial intelligence, to me, means at least these are things that we don't have to give it any kind of information. It just knows.
Yep.
And John Carmack, he's one of a legend of programming. He made Doom and Quake.
Yep.
He recently left Facebook because he used to work at Facebook doing the Oculus stuff. So that was his Facebook poached.
That's VR, AR?
Virtual reality.
Yep.
So the headset you look at, you can feel like you're in a thing. And he left Facebook to work on. He thinks he can achieve general artificial intelligence on his own in the next kind of 5 years. So he's pretty much, that's his thing now. So he's going to that's his task, to try and achieve that. And if anybody can, it's probably him.
Wow.
So I'm waiting to see what he does in terms of that. But in terms of what we have now, no, it's just fancy lists and databases and sorters. It's kind of a lot like the blockchain stuff. Yeah. That's just like a database.
Yeah, so, for sure. But I mean, in the future, so when I think of artificial intelligence, I think of the Turing test. And I was racking my brain because I couldn't remember what it was. So the Turing test, so obviously when you can't decipher whether it's a human or a computer that you're talking to. And, the processing power being the same as a human being and, you will not being able to decipher the difference between the two. So, is that a reality on the horizon?
Oh, we have that now. Like, if there are Turing tests now that you can do online, and it's like, I don't know if this is a person or a robot. So that works essentially. If it's done right, it works. But that's not necessarily artificial intelligence. It has to be fed information first.
Yeah,
a human has to set that up.
Yeah.
General artificial intelligence means essentially you can ask it a question, and without having to preload it with any source data, and it can find that data, interpret that data without having you to make a model for it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, could it happen? Maybe. Will it happen in our lifetimes? Maybe. Again, it's so hard to say, but definitely people like John Carmack, Google is definitely trying.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I think the limit will be not so much the technology, which is in most cases, it'll be what society is comfortable with. I think when it actually happens, society will be like, shit, that's a bit scary. We don't want, like facial recognition stuff. We're getting to the point now where facial recognition is getting so good, it can be used in a way that society is not comfortable with.
Yeah, and Minority Report style.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not it. To a few nerds, it sounds cool and good. Or if you step back and go, I'm not responsible for what my technology does. it's fine. But if you care about how humans are treated and how society operates, you can't make this stuff without thinking of what happens once it's
Absolutely.
it's done.
For sure.
And that, in the past, we didn't think about that. We just thought, just do it, get it done, and it's not going to affect me, or it'll sort itself out. Or they have an ideal notion of how it will be used, and they forget that it can be used in a bad way as well as a good way. And I think that will be the limit of artificial intelligence, not so much it being able to happen. When, I don't know. No one knows. Anyone tells you is
no, that's
trying
right.
to take your money, but
or a futurist.
or futurist who makes money from this stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that would be the limit. Society's comfortableness with it.
I tried to read Superintelligence. You know Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom?
I've heard of it, but I don't read many books about that kind of stuff. I find them really boring. So.
Yeah, you know what? I was so pumped about reading Superintelligence, and I was listening to it actually. I have the book in my bookshelf there, but I was listening to it, and it was too dense for me. You know, I was like, surely there's going to be some stuff that, you know, in layman's terms here that I can really wrap my head around. And I guess a lot of it I could, but it was too dense. But I have read, I've read heaps on the topic, to be honest, but I've read another book that I really recommend. I forget who the author is, but it's called Our Final Invention, or Our Last Invention. And it talks about the concept of, once we get to general artificial intelligence, that should be the point at which, realistically, if we're the ones, and I know that we're already not in some certain circumstances, but if we're the ones that are writing the code and programming the computers to get better and get better and get better to reach this point of artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence, what do they call the when you're in a black hole, when you can't go back? Isn't it called the
like a vortex?
The event, the horizon?
Event
Singularity.
Horizon.
The singularity.
Singularity.
The
yes,
singularity.
That's been popular since the 90s.
Yeah, that's a term that frequently used. So once we reach the singularity, once artificial intelligence is as powerful as humans, then doesn't it become, okay, cool, well, we shouldn't really be the ones writing the code then, because if their computer, if the Moore's law means that the processing power will continue to, you know, rise or double in every couple of years, whatever the stat is, then it should be the computers over the next years that are writing the computer, and it should snowball and get to the point where they're so much more powerful than us. And in that, the reason I say this is that that book, Our Final Invention, or Our Last Invention, it has a quote in there, and it says, artificial intelligence is like, waking up artificial intelligence would be like human beings waking up in a jail policed by mice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the popular sci-fi trope is that artificial intelligence gets so good it kills us all.
Yeah,
that's the
Skynet.
Terminator. Yeah, Terminator. So that's gotta be careful.
But I want your opinion. So artificial intelligence, I have a particular side of the fence that I heavily sit on. So I've written bad here, but good or bad, artificial intelligence say in our lifetime, say we're grey-haired old men, 60, 70 years old, and artificial intelligence, so that would be 40 years from now, general artificial intelligence, 5 years later, it's wildly more powerful than us. Is it a good, bad, scary, utopian? What is it?
I've watched Terminator. I think it'll end up like Terminator.
You think it'll look like Terminator?
I think so.
Fuck!
That's my nightmare. I think if it's not done properly, which going by the past 20 years of technology hasn't been done properly.
Yeah.
We need to really learn from Elon Musk reckons it's going to be a disaster too.
Humanity's biggest issue that we will face
is artificial intelligence. And I mean, you look at how
Stephen Hawking said the same thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Smartest bloke ever.
Yeah. So I think they're onto something there. I think if not done carefully and properly, and there'll be someone who doesn't listen to the rules or doesn't perceive how it should happen properly, and then they'll just go and do it. And once technology is made, it's hard to take that back. Yeah. And then we're in a mess. Well,
Nick Bostrom from the Superintelligence book, his famous analogy is, or his famous thought experiment is, what happens if you said that, okay, cool, we want as many paper clips as possible made in the most efficient way, so on and so forth, and we forget to program the fact that it's coming out of this like little, this little sample of metals that we have to do the experiment, and then you don't program the computer correctly, and it turns all of Earth's matter into paperclips. Like that's the paperclip theory, which is that's not really Skynet. That's not really meaning to do evil and do us harm, but that's just human error.
Yeah, the unintended consequence.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, that's what's so difficult about almost all tech stuff is once it's made so hard to take back, you really have to be careful about what you do in the first place. You have to explore what is the worst case scenario, because that will probably happen.
For sure. So I actually, I love hearing about AI and reading about it and watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts and whatever, talking to people like yourself. I actually lean towards the utopian side of it.
I hope that's what happens.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. Because, so correct me if I'm wrong, Moore's law is the law that computer processing power doubles every 2 years?
Well, it wasn't necessarily computing power. It was the amount of transistors that you can fit in a package.
Gotcha.
And that's coming to an end. Like Intel have kind of hit a wall with that. TSMC, who make the chips in iPhones and other products, they're getting to the wires inside those CPUs are like 5 nanometers now.
Yeah,
7 to
right.
5 nanometers, and we're getting close to it. It's like 1 atom wide. they start to stop working because the effects of that.
Because it's not even a thing anymore.
Yeah. There's a lot of leakage from that atom because a transistor is a switch.
Jesus Christ,
on or off, and it's so small now. We're getting the problems with that. We actually can't fit any more transistors into. For a long time, people thought there'd been a limit, but we've hit that limit now, and now it's like, all right, now what do we do once we hit that
so
limit?
would the next thing be nanotechnology, nanocomputing?
Quantum computing seems to be what.
So what is quantum computing? Because realistically, I've heard that term so many times, and I don't know what the fuck it means.
In quantum computing,
and probably none of our listeners do either. Let's be honest. We don't have scientific powered, listeners.
Yeah, I mean, from my again, I don't really know either. From my understanding is, you've got ones and zeros in a normal computer, on and off. In a quantum computer, you've got more than on and off. You've got different states.
Yeah.
So one switch can be put to multiple things all at once. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it's just insanely more powerful. Instead of having on or off, you can have on and off times 5.
Yeah.
And because that makes it way more powerful. At the moment, it's 5. The hypothesis is that you can have billions because the quantum...
On and off times 5.
Yeah, so it's kind of like if things are not on or off, things sit in the middle of it, and you can change those. It's not on or off anymore. It totally upends the method of computing as we know it. It's not binary. It's not a transistor. It's not like a switch. It's... a quantum state.
A multitude of options.
And that's what makes it so fast. But that's also what makes it very difficult to program for, to make software for. So it's fine to have these super fast computers, but if you can't make software for it, it's kind of useless.
Yeah.
So, but if they do become popular and they do become fast, if there's some people would learn those techniques. I'm sure when computers first came out, binary was a bit confusing for people, and it still is for a lot of people. People would learn quantum programming instead, which could lead to that kind of artificial intelligence could lead to a lot more discoveries because it's just multitudes faster.
Interesting. Yeah, right. So, well, my whole thing with the good, positive artificial intelligence is because I always thought that Moore's law meant that. Well, put it this way: I always was under the impression that computers were going to continue to get more powerful. Yeah. So, if we're to get to artificial intelligence, that does have to be the case.
Yes, and it will happen, but not with transistors. As we know it.
Yes,
and that will be based on probably a quantum computer.
Yes. So say that is the case, and say that in 40, 50 years we do get to artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence, then within 3, 5, 10, whatever it is, depending on however fast computers are progressing, they're going to be doubly as powerful as us. And then also 10 years after that, they're going to be 4 times as powerful as us, and 8 times and 16 and so on and so forth in that compound interest snowball effect. So within another 50 years past the time that we reach artificial intelligence, computers should be, and I haven't done the, compound growth, but whatever they would be 150 times more powerful than the human brain. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then shouldn't we be able to say, hey Google or hey Siri, how do you eradicate global poverty? Hey Siri, how do you fuck off cancer? Yeah. Hey Siri, how do you repair the ozone?
That's the theory.
Or reverse global warming.
That's the theory.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff does happen now. I mean, the way that we cure cancer now is feeding it a whole bunch of data and going through every single different scenario that cancer can have and finding out what works. And that's how we predict the weather. We feed it a whole bunch of data and you predict all right, based on these 10 billion different
Data points.
options, this one seems to be the most realistic. That's the weather forecast for the next week.
Really?
So that's what we do now. It's just that when you have faster computers, you can do that a lot faster.
Yeah, right.
And there's different ways that you can optimize that information. That's what programmers working towards, and people earn lots of money to try and do it. And that's what Google's been doing with their Go. So I'm not sure. There's a game called Go, like a Korean board game called Go. It's kind of like chess in a way.
Yeah.
That was considered to be the last kind of human endeavor that a computer can't beat us at. Like there's chess and backgammon and checkers, all those kind of things. Computers have threatened us for years now.
Yeah.
Go was the last one because it was quite a complicated game. Google's computer thrashed the grandmaster at Go over and over and over, and the guy has stopped playing Go now.
He's just off it.
Yeah, like
he's cracked the shit.
Yeah, he's pretty much like, I'm not as good as the computer. I'll play for fun, but not at a competitive level. So stuff like that, getting faster and faster at things and processing data faster and faster is what will lead to those kind of things. It won't be one big bang where all of a sudden you've got it. It'll be a gradual build up where we've amassed so much data and we can process the data so much faster because of faster CPUs, faster drives, faster programming algorithms that we will. That was what artificial intelligence will end up looking like, more than like a oracle kind of thing that just can conjure out of nothing. And that's what Mark Zuckerberg's foundation is trying to do. AWS, the Amazon's web services, you can do that kind of stuff on there. It's just and
really
maybe one day there'll be a breakthrough that'll make things 10% faster, and we'll notice it. And but that's how medical research happens, and like nuclear weapons research.
Yeah, well, that's what my utopian kind of. If it becomes that smart, we have so many issues that we can't figure out. Then we don't have to figure it out. We just got to get the computer to figure it out. So that's my grand hope for everything. If computers become conscious, then we're probably fucked.
Skynet.
Yeah, that's when it becomes. That's when it would become Skynet. That's the other. Yeah, so, I mean, cool, sweet. So we just talked about data and how important it is to, like, science and computer programming and so on and so forth. But what about, like, one of the questions in tech that I think is, like, quite pressing at the moment and so on and so forth. So here's an example, and I've used this example so many times on the podcast. It actually happened on the podcast, but I had a buddy of mine. He came around to do a podcast. He's like a fitness dude and really interesting guy, and he'd been traveling the world. So I just wanted to get him around, have a bit of a catch up and do a podcast. And it was me, Ed, this is my mate, and then Tommy, my co-host. And Ed came around at about 10 p.m. at night, and he'd just come from footy training. He started playing footy again, and it was so ridiculous. Came around at 10 o'clock at night. He had his full footy gear on, middle of winter, like long skins, footy socks pulled up still, and he just had runners on, and he had his jumper on. And I'm like, mate, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, got to come straight for footy training, mate. Anyway, literally 10 p.m. at night. We recorded for an hour, and then I was so exhausted. It was like 11 p.m. I'd just been talking for an hour, and I remember finished recording and said, see you later, Ed. And then Tommy just bailed straight away, went home, and then I went straight to bed. But what happened inside of the show, the 1 hour show, we talked about, it was a travel roundtable show, so basically just talking about travel in general. And Ed goes, have you guys heard about the swimming pigs in the Bahamas? And I was like, the what? He goes, the swimming pigs, the swimming pigs in the Bahamas. I said, no, Ed, I haven't heard about the swimming pigs in the Bahamas. What are you talking about, mate? And he goes, there's these pigs in the Bahamas. And it's like crystal clear Caribbean waters, and all these celebrities and influencers and all that, they're all flying over there and blowing this thing up. And now you can go and you do like a $10,000 holiday. You stay on this island in the Bahamas and you swim with these pink pigs.
Okay.
I remember it so well because it might have been the hardest I've laughed in the podcast because Ed said something like, he goes, but you know what I'm worried? He goes, is who's sunscreening these poor bloody pigs? And then we started talking about slapping these pigs and fuck all this stuff. And we were just laughing our heads off. And then anyway, I've never in my life, 100% without a shadow of a doubt, heard of the concept of the pink pigs. Yeah. I've never searched it. I've never Googled anything like it. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. And then the next morning I woke up and my Facebook feed and Instagram feed was flooded with swimming pigs in the Bahamas. So my point being,
how did that happen?
Yeah. And like the data security thing, so obviously data is science. Science is data driven. which our world is data-driven and driven by science. But, personal data and so forth, and data security, and I feel like we're getting to what you said with the facial recognition stuff. We're getting to a Big Brother 1984 style setup, I feel like. So talk to me about what you think the future, again, I know you're not a futurist, but the future and where we're at now, even with data security and just where the world's going in that regard, because I don't know.
If you look at China, you got a good example of what will happen in the Western world. I think the temptation to do that stuff is just too great for people for governments and law enforcement to resist. Literally just the biggest story right now from the New York Times is about a company called Clearview AI, which is founded by an Australian guy, and they sell to law enforcement all around the world to match security camera footage to social media photos. So let's say there's a photo of you in having a nice holiday on Instagram, and the police have a crime that happens, and they've got footage of a person who broke into a car, for example. You've got no reason to be a suspect in this crime, but perhaps you were in the area at that time. They will put a picture. They'll get the picture from the security camera footage, pump it into this Clearview AI software, and it'll search all of Facebook or all of Instagram to find a match. And we're getting so fast and good at it now that they can ID people that they haven't ID'd before. And that's that's happening now, and it's companies making billions off it.
That's
and a lot of this.
That's kind of good though, in a way.
It's good.
It's good and bad.
Well, Microsoft's president, not Satya Nadella, the president of the board and who's their chief lawyer, he recently said that because the EU wants to ban facial recognition for 5 years while they figure out what happens.
Yep.
And he's like, no, don't ban it because the good things can be done with it. Let's say there's a missing child and you want to find that missing child. If you ban facial recognition technology for 5 years, in that 5 year time, we can't use it to find missing kids.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to find missing kids.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you're someone who's been wrongly accused, because the AI stuff is not perfect yet, it's like a very hit and miss.
Yeah.
Particularly if the source footage is poor quality source footage, you could be accused of a crime you had no connection to. Yeah. Because this AI software thinks you're a 70% match. Yeah. Suddenly you're in court and your life's ruined. And even worse for a minority group. If you're a black or a Muslim or any kind of non-white normal person with the funds to defend themselves. So it can be good in some ways, bad in others. And I think our capability as a democracy to regulate this stuff is very limited. In China, they do it because that's what the government wants this, it happens, it gets done, and that's their choice. But in Western countries, it's a lot hard. Some people do want it. If you make the argument that we can find missing kids, it's very hard for someone to go, I don't want to find missing kids, fuck them. Yeah, that's right. No one wants to say that. Yeah. But it's a lot muddier of an argument, so that's why we end up with these imperfect systems that are just a mess. And that's not the future, that's happening now. Facial recognition stuff is probably the most near problem we have that we can maybe try and avoid a disaster if done properly. But it's a very difficult thing to solve.
And what do you think about the fact that everything is tracked? Everything. Obviously, when you talk about Facebook and Google and Spotify and YouTube and whatever, it's all of the things that we like. It's all just run by commerce and capitalism. It's all just that is what it is. So, but what do you think about the fact that every single thing we think, they know that we're about to think it before we do?
I think I don't like it in the first place, but I don't think it's as advanced or as detailed as what people make it out to be. I think that you think about how online ads are so poor at targeting what you want and getting you to buy stuff. I don't think I've ever bought anything from a Facebook ad or from an Instagram ad that I would actually have not known about before or just purchased in the first place. All that data, all the smart people doing that stuff, yet they can't convince me to buy a $10 pair of socks. I don't think it's as useful as people think it is, and the real skill is in saying what's good and what isn't. And I don't know. I think it's bad that it exists because it creates like a big honeypot of this stuff that can be taken in the wrong context. but I don't think it's being used as efficiently as people think it is, and as creepily as people think it is.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll leave that one. So I have another interesting question. So this might not be in your field of expertise, I don't know, but I think one of the issues that we have at the moment is algorithmic content.
Okay. Yep.
So what I mean by that is, I interviewed Kevin Kelly, who you probably would have got
the fan of 1,000 True Fans.
Yeah. So
He's a big influence on what I do.
Yeah. Kevin Kelly. I thought you would for sure know Kevin Kelly, and that was a great show. He had just released one of his most recent books. I forget what the book was called. To be honest, it was about 2 years ago. We interviewed him, but it was basically 12 trends for the future. That was like what the book's premise was, and it was something like that was the actual title. But so Kevin Kelly was talking about the fact that algorithms are ruining our ability to make a clear and informed decision on important topics. So what I mean by that is like YouTube's the world's second biggest search engine, and I myself spend so much fucking wasted time on YouTube. I like it.
Yeah.
If there's content that I'm going to scroll and sit in front of or whatever, I prefer it over Facebook and Instagram any day, that's for sure. But I spend too much time in there, you know. So, but the problem is everything is so... Well, probably maybe not more than in you know the past, but what I'm about to say is that it's more like volatile and so on and so forth. But it's maybe not. But what is happening is you pick a side in a debate or an argument or religion or politics, and you get fed over and over and over that viewpoint. You don't get fed the alternate viewpoint to say, hey, cool, I see that you're leaning towards this. Have you ever thought about this, watching this video that complements this and it tells the story in a different light? We don't get any of that. We get fed what we want. And I think that's a huge issue. And I think that's why there will continue to be way more of a divide between, you know, people that sit on one side of the fence on the gender equality topic and global warming and left versus right politics and all that stuff. I think it's because we get pigeonholed into these groups and communities and threads and algorithms that keep feeding us the same information that we like to be fed, which is information that we currently believe in. You know, rather than picking up a newspaper, and although newspapers lean towards whatever they want to lean towards, and you can't control that really either, they're much more... They're not one. It's not an e-newspaper that feeds you the stuff that you want to read. It's like more balanced, but that's not the way we consume. It
has to appeal to a broader audience to get people actually buying it rather than like 10,000 people. The long tail of that audience doesn't work in a physical media.
No,
broader. Yeah.
That's right. So again, I mean, I don't know. That's.
I mean, why I see that is it's quite a simple thing. I mean, they've worked out that the whole purpose of these businesses, particularly like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram videos, is to get that engagement stat. The longer you're watching it, the more chance that the ads they show you will have some kind of impact.
100%. That's
their core reason to exist. And they know that based on the experiments that they want to use without their permission, that if we make you angry or if we make you upset or if we antagonize, that antagonistic kind of content is what gets people watching more.
Yeah,
it's just you may think that that's not who you are and that's not how you react, but
it's human nature.
It probably is, and or your content that you agree with, and they know that if they do that, you're going to watch more, and that's the reason why they do it. I don't think it's a conspiracy to mold society or a conspiracy to change people's minds. It's simply put, you watch videos longer
for sure.
if you like that.
No, I agree.
They tune the algorithm to send you those kind of videos, and they can sell you ads. Whether it works or not, I don't know, but that's pretty much what they're doing. No,
I agree with all that. I just think that it's not a sustainable way to have a society function.
No, it's not.
You know what I mean?
Yes. So that's the downside of it. Like, we're going to end up, you know, as more and more people use that as the information source and don't trust or don't regard the other sources of information, we're at the behest of a handful of American companies, and it's like, is this what we want? And the Australian government, the ACCC, investigated the whole digital media marketplace. It was done because Rupert Murdoch, the News Corp media, and Fairfax were annoyed that they can't compete with Facebook for ads or Google for ads. But it revealed interesting concept that the companies are just so big and they've got so much money and they're good at what they're showing you what you want to read and what you want to see. It's really hard for others to compete.
Yeah.
And even just on a money-making basis, Google's ad platform is so big.
Oh.
If you're someone who's looking to place ads, you can get 90% of your market with Google or Facebook. Why would you bother putting an ad on The Age or on the Herald Sun?
Yeah, that's right.
So that without ads, they die, and that's the simple matter of it is that ad market.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that at some point somebody has to police that, and this is where
that's where it gets really spicy because who we want to police what information that we read. That's never happened before.
Or not police the information that we need, but police the have some sort of standard in place that says you can't feed people continually one-sided opinions on. The algorithm has to be more even. Because there used to be fair news laws. I spoke to a journalist about this the other day, and I don't know too much about it, so I won't really go too far into it. But it used to be in like 100 years ago, it used to be if you print 50 pages of a newspaper, 20 have to be this, 20 have to be that, and 10 have to be that. And I'm talking about like it's all very much even. And then the tabloid news came out, and the news has been fucked for 100 years since then. Yeah. But so I don't know what we do, and I think that I don't know. I think the future, the next wars will be tech versus government. And it'll be government trying to do things like this, what I'm talking about. Government trying to control money that, like if Libra took off, obviously Facebook's currency, which is probably not really going to from what I'd like to talk to you about that as well. But I think that the next big wars that we may have might be governments versus tech, because tech is becoming the government, you know. Tech is becoming more powerful than the government. All they don't have is militaries.
Yeah. I agree. There's one issue, backdoor encryption debates in getting into people's phones and for law enforcement. That's been a big issue in Australia. We've got the assistance and access bill, the law where if the federal police say, look, we need to get into this person's phone, if you work at that company that makes the phone or makes software on the phone, you have to do it, otherwise you go to jail. You know, other countries want that kind of law in their systems. Like the United States right now.
We have that in Australia.
Yes.
Do we really?
Yeah. This happened last.
I remember in
year.
America, Apple were pushing back with the government, and they said no.
Correct. In America, they have.
Yeah.
And they're still just literally in the past week, the Attorney General in America asked Apple to unlock another phone, and Apple said no.
Really?
And so they're dying to get that kind of law in because, from law enforcement's point of view, tech companies are holding back catching criminals.
Yeah.
But
they are kind of, I guess. But
it's true. Like
it's like breaking into someone's house to look for. Oh, it's like a warrant. I suppose you have a warrant to search a house. You should have a warrant to search a phone.
They do have warrants. The problem is they just can't unless the owner of the device gives a password or a PIN. Yeah. You just can't get in. Like
that's pretty good, isn't it? That the tech is that lock solid.
Yes, and arguably it's debatable as to how secure it is. Like some people think that if I can actually get into these phones, it's a pain. And they want it so that they don't have to go through all this mess to get it. They just have to. There's a way in for them. Yeah. To make it easier for them. Yeah. But ultimately, it's a constant cat and mouse game between tech and the governments to get into these devices, get into these things, and governments overseas, like in India recently, they just shut down the internet in Delhi because they didn't like how people were spreading content about protests. So they just no internet, no 4G, 5G. 3G internet for the next week because you can't. Yeah,
they turned the internet off.
Yeah.
What?
And in Australia, we have a similar law.
Fuck yeah.
I mean, in Australia, you can.
Oh my god, man!
After the Christchurch shooting happens, Australia now has a law where if the police or the e-safety commissioner, so that's a person they call the e-safety commissioner, they can decide what to shut down. So let's say there's another shooting happens and it's being live streamed. The police can order the ISPs and to just cut off access to Facebook, just to stop that being shown in Australia. So Australians can't see Facebook for like an hour or two while that's happening. So that's definitely the governments are realizing the internet doesn't benefit them having it as an all open thing. I think over the next 10 years, we'll see what used to be a Wild West, open, do whatever you want place, which is what I loved and what made me who I am, be turned into a regulated, controlled, government looked after scenario, which I can't see that as being any other way from that happening, because now the internet, everyone uses it. You can't have just like whatever you want on the internet. Like it's once it's that big, you kind of have to control it somehow, and it'll suck. But that's just the realities of something being popular.
The most popular thing in the world.
Yes.
So another thing that this is, I talked to Steve Sammartino the other day. Do you know Steve Sammartino?
Name sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
He's a futurist, an Australian futurist, and he's really good. You guys get on great talking about tech and futuristic fucking tech and what's going on. And anyway, we were talking about Libra, Facebook's cryptocurrency, and we employ people with my company all around the world, and it's difficult to transfer money worldwide. There's no, how like PayPal and Stripe, they're like the worldwide payment gateway leaders. Like we use Stripe, and it's like fucking unbelievable how professional it is, how switched on it is, how the API can, what things you can do with it. I don't actually really know what API even stands for, but we'll leave that. Okay. you might be the man to ask. But there's no real great way to pay people. There's no Stripe of paying people abroad. There's about 10 different platforms. Yeah. TransferWise, PayPal, Payoneer, fucking whatever these other ones are. And they're all like 60% good, whereas Stripe's 100% good. Stripe's, where you want to be. So anyway, Facebook obviously want to have Libra as the worldwide Bitcoin. And I was actually super excited for it. I was like, this will be sick, because it'll just be a seamless, instant way for everyone around the world to use their money, And when I was talking to Steve Sammartino, he was like, he said, but the scary thing is, who builds our roads? And I was like, what? And he goes, this is why another reason why I think that, whether it's Libra or something else in the future, this is another reason I think that it'll be the next big wars, or at some point there'll be tech versus government wars, is because Steve Sammartino was like, who builds our roads? And I said, what do you mean, who builds our roads? And he said, when no money goes through the government, and when Facebook say, fuck off, you're not taxing us, this is our platform, who builds the infrastructure that surrounds us?
Schools, hospitals.
Yeah, who builds the roads? And I was like, that's an interesting question. But what do you think is the future of or how much do you know about Libra for one? Because I know that MasterCard and Visa pulled out.
Pretty much everyone's pulled out.
Everyone's pulled out.
Because once they realised the EU said they're not going to allow it.
Yeah.
They're not going to give Facebook a license to operate as a money. They can make their own cryptocurrency and they can change money between users, but to actually get that from Facebook bucks to real money you can use in your shops.
Yeah.
That's always been the challenge. That's what Bitcoin had issues with.
So banks have to be on board.
Banks, or you can make your own bank, but the government has to. If you want to interact with money, you need the government's permission in some way or another.
Yeah.
Even at a basic level, just to avoid money laundering, which is a known bad thing you should avoid, because it can be used for
organised crime,
drugs, crime, all kinds of bad things.
Yeah.
And that really limits the scope. So if Facebook could find a way to get places where you use money on board and just bypass cash altogether, and you end up to the point where you don't want Australian dollars, you don't want US dollars, you want Facebook money, then fine, you don't need the government permission.
So that would be the MasterCard and Visa thing?
Not necessarily. That would be, and Facebook and Visa were mostly on board because they were worried that if this takes off, we want our 1% cut in some way to change from Facebook to fiat money.
Yep.
And plus also just like we just want to be involved. We want a seat at the table.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they left so quickly, their hearts weren't ever in it. They're happy with the status quo of how it is now.
I think they were threatened by the governments too, weren't they? I think the American
possibly.
government said, if you go into bed with Facebook, we will look very hard into your practices, which we've turned a blind eye to for the last 50 years.
I would not be surprised. Even if that wasn't made public, I'm sure there was some cigar-filled room meeting where it's like, look, don't do this. So I think it's interesting how cryptocurrency, the dream was always a global currency we could spend anywhere without having to worry about exchange rates and everything like that. And it ended up being a way for people to hoard money.
Sell drugs on the dark net.
Sell drugs, or even just hide their money from the government to avoid paying tax. That's kind of the unintended consequences I was talking about earlier. I'm sure the person who made Bitcoin had the positive intentions for it to be a way to kind of free people from, governments that are not doing the right thing, that are overbearing on the way people manage their finances. In reality, it ended up being, pretty much not an ideal scenario, what we have now. So, yeah, I think with Facebook's Libra thing, first of all, I don't think that it'll actually happen in the way that Facebook wants.
Yeah.
Because the way that they want it to happen needs a lot of government cooperation. And the government just hates Facebook. Every government around the world hates Facebook right now.
Yeah.
Because not only is there the fact that the whole tax thing and money thing, they don't pay taxes where they should be paying them. That's a big issue for governments, just as a Facebook as a business. And the way that they manage the misinformation we were talking about earlier about the algorithm and what news that they show you, governments hate that, particularly ones who, Donald Trump might like it now because he's in power and that's how he may have had a good way to influence people through Facebook. But as soon as there's someone else in power, they're not going to forget what happened 10 years ago and how they got screwed over by Facebook. So there's a lot of things in Facebook's way to make this a reality. And Facebook's very worried that, because at any moment, the government could go, look, you have to split WhatsApp, Instagram into separate companies, and and you have to make
Messenger.
this. Yep, or you have to make this wholesale platform that anyone can build upon, so that you can't hoard all this data about people. You have to share that data with like, as a wholesale thing, and Facebook does not want that. That is their worst case scenario, and that would impact their value in a massive way. That's so the government and Facebook has to kind of suck up the government a bit to prevent that from happening, or at least make it not happen sooner rather than later.
So how do the Chinese do it? Because the Chinese pay through WeChat.
They've done what Facebook wants.
Yeah.
They just don't have cash. Like the government.
But how are the government involved with WeChat though?
Well, they have full access to all the servers and all the information.
So they tax WeChat money?
Not a tax. They can.
Is it Chinese dollar they pay, or whatever yen they pay on WeChat?
It's both. You can get WeChat points,
points effectively,
and then you can convert that into renminbi. The CNY is what it's like the abbreviation.
Yeah.
To do a currency conversion.
Is that what China's currency is?
Renminbi.
I thought it was yen.
It's also called the Chinese yen. So,
gotcha.
Yeah. But WeChat is difficult. If you have a tech business in China, the government and the law enforcement have full access to your servers. So they can monitor all the transactions. They know who's who. When you sign up for WeChat, it's linked to your personal identity. You can't make an account without giving your government ID.
Yep.
So it's really hard to prevent the nefarious stuff. Because China's all up... I'm not an expert on China, but from what I've read, it's all about maintaining social harmony. They want everything to be nice and neat and the same, which is why you see the concentration camps up in the north of China. That's why they hate the land. They want the different minority groups they're not a fan of because they don't act the way that the rest of China does. They want it to be all the same and homogenous, and that would build social harmony to avoid the murderers, to avoid rapists and stuff. I don't know if that works or not, but that's
that's the theory.
The overall Chinese aim.
Yeah.
And being able to control the information is part of that. If they can't control what people send on messaging apps, or if they can't control who's paying for what or who's making what businesses, you end up with a Western scenario where it's just a free-for-all where you get rapists and murderers and bad people. And that's why they do what they do.
No murder and rape in China, they reckon?
That's why that's their aim.
That's their aim.
They want to maintain social harmony. And in a way, a lot of the Chinese people buy into it because 20, 30 years ago, they were living on rice farms with poor ads and not enough food. Now, the cities are massive. They're living better than they ever have. So they've got no reason to question.
Massive rising middle class.
They've got no reason to question what the government's done. I think
Fair
that
enough,
will change. But, which you saw in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has had that for such a long time. They don't want to be like China. So they protest. And, China controls the information flowing through there too because they don't want it to happen in their country. But as soon as people get a taste of that freedom, it's that social harmony image gets torn down, and then you've got riots, and then you've got a big upheaval in how society works, and they don't want that, which is understandable, but realistic, Probably not.
Yeah. All right. We could talk about that stuff all day. Because I think that maybe there might be some other coin that's not the fiat currency that just takes over one day, but who knows? But have you seen Gattaca?
A long time ago.
How much do you know about bioengineering?
Not much at all. No, it's not really a field that I focus on. But I mean,
what do you reckon of it?
It sounds promising. I mean, who wouldn't want to be cured of all kind of illnesses and be looked after? But
blonde hair, blue eyed babies.
That's kind of creepy. But
that should be
that's
illegal, right?
Well, that's where regulation comes in. I mean, that's the whole thing around the stem cell research. Why there's limits on what can and can't be done, and the CRISPR. Have you heard of CRISPR? A guy scientists in China ignore the regulations and the kind of groupthink around how research should be done on that, and he made a baby. Well, not made a baby. The baby was born with genes edited using that technique, and that to kind of cut out a genetic defect. And they don't know what's going to happen to that baby now. And then when that baby grows up and has its own children, how's that is passed down? So again, we're seeing some of that happening with that technology now. We're kind of on the cusp of it. But I don't know enough about it to know whether it's good or bad. But it's very interesting stuff to look at from a distance.
Yeah, look, we won't go dive deep into that one. Maybe I've got one last question. So obviously Australia's been on fire, and weather patterns around the world are seeming to be more aggressive, and so on and so forth. And this is what people have always said will happen with global warming. Not sure whether you are a denier of global warming or you're all behind the science of it or whatever. But what type of technology in your kind of world, is there anything that you've seen that's promising in the future for attacking global warming?
It all exists. Sun, wind, and batteries. And we've got many reports of Australia could have more than 100% renewable energy. The total electricity sector could be zero emissions. Our cars could be zero emissions. We just don't want to. That's the only thing holding us back. I think the technology is not an issue now.
Yeah.
Pricing is not an issue now.
Yeah.
The CSIRO, those lefty hippies scientists, are saying this.
Yeah.
It's not a controversial thing to say within science anymore. It's controversial in society because of many reasons, but we can definitely do it. 100% renewables. We can make money selling our electricity to foreign countries in the form of materials. For example, making aluminium. That's embodied power, pretty much. The main cost for aluminium is the energy to make it, the power. If we have free energy coming in from the sun and the wind, when there's lots of free energy, make the aluminium and sell it to Asia, because they don't have the resources that Australia has. We're lucky to have a big continent all to ourselves. Where in Perth, in Western Australia, it's sunny when it's dark here. Build a long cable. They've done it in China. They've got from the east to west of their country a long power cable to get the power from the hydro dams, the massive dams that they have, to power the interior of the country where it's snow and the mountain and desert. So we can do all that. The technology is not an issue. It's just politicians beholden to the coal to mining lobby. It's literally like a dozen people. In my opinion, I think that's quite a common opinion from a lot of people. Is like it's just like a handful of people. Who are, I think, if you
are obscenely rich right now already,
or have power, and just want to hold on to what they have and don't really care about the consequences of it. And if they went away, or if they weren't listened to, we would have. It wouldn't solve the whole emissions problem, but half. We can cut it by half within 10 years. That's not. Our government says that's unrealistic and it'll destroy the economy. It won't. There's no. All the reports that have been done on it say it won't. Their own reports say it won't. So what the politicians are saying is different than what the departments are saying. Who do you believe? And no one believes politicians. Surely, of course, they're going to have some kind of hidden agenda. So that's why it's so frustrating to see this. Australia could be the world leaders in this. but we're not. We're missing a good opportunity to lead on this and sell our stuff to the rest of the world and build a more prosperous country. But we're not.
How unfortunate is greed, the character trait of greed, you know?
Yeah. At this point, it's great, but also just stupidity and like a small-minded thing. I mean, the people who have no skin in the game, like just like your average person in the street who doesn't believe that climate change is a thing, first of all, I don't understand how you formed that opinion without...
Yeah.
They say that I'm not... Like, the whole point... The reason they don't believe that is because they think that they're smarter than everyone else, that they've seen the truth. Yeah, I don't know how you could actually see the truth, yet still think that. And yeah, it's some weird... It's more than just greed at this point. I think it's about... part of the whole culture war thing.
Yeah.
Personal identification through climate change.
I agree. It's the us versus them, and it goes back to the algorithm thing.
I think that plays a big part.
Dead set, 100%. I got a Facebook group with a few of my buddies, and I had no idea it was going to go this way because I'm not super conspiratorial. I set the Facebook group up, and my 3 mates in there, they just go hard on just conspiracy this, conspiracy that, and a lot of it's not global warming denial, but like it kind of like leans towards that a lot. I had a guest on the other day, and he was talking about he was a journalist, and he was talking about the fact that 99% of the world's scientists now are in agreement that it's human-made climate.
And that's very rare for scientists to agree. That weight on the same topic. In other topics, there's a lot of ifs and buts. Climate change,
it's like. It was Rowan Connolly, the footy writer, actually. We actually just talked about journalism, really. We didn't talk about footy at all. And he made a good point. He's like, what other thing that we have in our scientific life is backed by 99% of the scientists? And we go, fuck off, mate. Yeah. What are you on about? The world's always been warm and all. What, you come up with some other... Yeah. It's like, you try and use like... I think he used like chemotherapy, like going in and going like, look, you have a tumour, we're going to have to attack it with some chemotherapy, and you're going like, you know what, doc? Nah, I'm not chemotherapy. Don't believe in it. It's like, well, you can choose not to believe in science, but why'd you fucking buy a TV? Why do you use a mobile phone? Like our lives are backed by science. So it is, it's a real, but it all just comes down to economic factors, which is really annoying because I think humans are inherently good, I always say this on the podcast. Whether you agree or disagree, some people disagree, some people agree, but I think we're inherently good. But yeah, we're just trapped in this fucked up culture that just is dumb and greedy, and it's all kind of snowballed and gone a bit out of control. But anyway, well, that's interesting though. So yeah, you reckon we could be carbon neutral in 10 years if we decided to?
I think so. If Australia, at the very least, would be like 90%.
Yeah.
That last 10% could be difficult.
Yeah.
But without spending a lot of money either. Like, if you end the subsidies that we give to, say, if you increase the fuel excise tax a bit to not punish, but to make people get away from petrol cars or from diesel trucks to look into other stuff, use that money to build. Or even if you just let investors, if you had a strong policy that said, look, we're not going to tear down the benefits that we give you, we're not going to tear down these programs and these schemes, investors will come and go, look, we've got a guarantee for at least 20 years, it's the lifetime of our investment, we can actually put the money in and build these things. If we get support from state governments to build the surrounding, like the power lines and to train people to build this stuff and to look after it, they'll come in and invest because it is a good investment. You can make money out of it. Some of the biggest companies in the world are, like, if you look at your super funds, the green super funds are making way more money than the other funds because there's just so much demand around the world for this stuff. And we're only just starting.
Growing economy.
Like, think about how little renewable energy there is at the moment, how much 100%. We need. It's going to explode.
Necessity is a mother of invention. So
I think that stuff can all happen, and a lot of it's very simple stuff. Like, if I can understand that there's proper engineers and designers who can do it in their sleep, and then let them tackle the difficult stuff, and they'll find a solution to it. Like, it's not that hard. Like, we can find a way, or even if we just have to change a few habits around how we use power and the incentives for how we charge for it and how we get paid for it, can make a big difference. You think of all the solar panels on the roofs in our houses. A lot of people in Australia are quite lucky that we understand how power pricing works. For us, we like you got off peak, on peak. Elsewhere in the world, it's pretty much just use whatever you want. So they can. The relationship we have with electricity in Australia is very different than how the rest of the world sees it. In the rest of the world, in America, they just build wind farms and it just happens and no one complains. Because in Australia, it's a lot more personal and a lot more. Politics have turned it into an issue, whereas in America, like in California, they've got tons of renewable energy. They're probably the world leaders in the sector. They did that under a Republican governor. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the guy who led that, and he's a conservative Republican. Yeah, in Australia and in the UK, they got tons of wind power, offshore, onshore. They've got a conservative government. Like literally, like it's a conservative government. It's not a debate there whether we should do this or not. Yeah. In Australia, it seems to be an issue here because our government has turned it into one. Probably because, again, of those dozen or so people who are in the mining lobby or who have some reason to want to create an us versus them debate over this topic. The rest of the world hasn't done that. And it's like, it's so sad that Australia is the place where it happened because we have so much to benefit from it and we can make the most use of it.
Man, that was a great answer, to be honest. I learned a lot in that answer.
Yeah, that's been, I know a lot of, because I've been in tech stuff for so long now.
Yep.
I kind of know what's happening in the tech industry and stuff like that. Whereas looking at the renewable energy industry, it's very exciting because it's still kind of fresh and new. A lot to learn. And a lot of people that I went to TAFE and uni with now work in the renewable sector instead because they found it more engaging and more interesting and more useful than tech. Tech's now, we've had it now for 30, 40 years. Yeah. The industry's kind of plateaued now. It's not as exciting as it once was. Yeah. Because renewable energy is kind of like what that tech boom was in the 90s. Yeah. That's how I see it and other tech people see it. It's really? Like we want to go towards renewable energy. Mike Cannon-Brooks, the Atlassian co-founder, he's big on renewable energy. He's he wants to run a cable from Northern Territory to Malaysia and Singapore to sell our power to them. That's the kind of stuff we should be investing in, not a coal mine near the Great Barrier Reef that will take all the water away from underground stuff and maybe 500 jobs. Yeah. That's such a short, small-minded thinking. Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, I hope there's a renewable energy boom going on and it continues. All right, I got another question for you. And we'll wrap the show up soon. We've been going for a while. So I got one really broad question. It might irk you a little bit, but is technology good for us?
I think when used by good people, it is. Like when you just let it be and let it go to its own devices and let society sort it out. No, we're seeing that now. That's not how you should treat a technology or treat a new invention. You have to guide it through and make sure it's not used in a bad way. When you just make something and hope for the best, that's not a good idea. So
yeah. The reason I say that is and far out listeners of this show would have heard me talk about this book 50,000 times. There's this book here called Tribe. Have you heard of Tribe? No. So this guy Sebastian Younger, he's a war journalist and war reporter. And anyway, he's written about it's basically like a play on we're tribal people and we're pushing shit uphill in the society that we live in, you know? Okay. Public transport, office cubicles, one-bedroom apartments, like we don't really, using the term lean in again, like lean into our history and our past and, what we really probably have in our blood. And that's that we're community-driven, family-driven. We want to be around people and so on. So we want to be in nature. And then now, like, as you can tell, I don't want to sound like I think that I know what I'm talking about because I don't. But I take a keen interest in technology. I'm very fired up by technology. I genuinely am. I reckon it's fucking awesome that we're going to go to Mars one of these days and potentially, set up a settlement there. And I want to travel intergalactically. Not me, but I want us to. I get it. Like I'm fired up by it, but I don't personally believe that we're probably better off than if we were hunter-gatherer societies. As like general, like from the day you're born till the day you die, your full life cycle and how happy and general wellness you feel throughout that period, I think we're doing it wrong. It's nobody's fault. We just agriculture, population boom, technology, here we are. Nobody did it. Nobody can be blamed. We're making the best of it. I think humans are good, like I said, but I don't think that we're doing it right just by chance. That's kind of what I wonder if you think deeply about tech and its technology as in, agriculture and in the industrial age and technology in a general sense for the last 10,000 years, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know whether it's good for us or not, or you can answer it in any way.
Yeah, I definitely think life is better now than it was in the 1500s.
Yes.
I think
that is true.
Yeah, having medicine, clean water, sewage,
less child.
not having to, being able to live to 80 is nice. But the technology that I think about mostly is the impact of technology that I'm responsible for, as in online media stuff and the internet is the technology that I kind of care about the most.
Yes.
And how that's impacting society. I think for me, because I think I've lived through the internet. Like there's a group of people who remember the time before the internet.
Me, I'm one of them.
Yeah, so I remember it wasn't until I was a teenager until I had the internet. Whereas until kids now have it from day one, literally like when they can look at stuff as a toddler looking at YouTube, looking at videos. So I am interested to see how that changes people. And I think the worst people at it are kind of older people, because they had so much of their lives where they didn't have this technology. Now it's there. They don't quite understand it. If you've ever seen older people interact on the internet, it's almost
a furrowed brow.
A comedy
it's
almost. Yes, like what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And some people at our age too are similar, but I think younger people definitely get it. I think younger people who have grown up with it, they're a lot more suspicious of the internet and suspicious of things than what you and I are, and even much more so than what our parents are. Yeah. Because it's
been part of their life from day
they're
one.
just more used to it. And I don't think it's as bad as people think, but also it could be better, of course. I'm not in the camp where we need to throw all our phones in the river and go back to not using the internet. I think the internet's been, on average, a good thing. It's only gone bad in the last kind of few years. I think that can be brought under control because it's only a handful of businesses that are responsible for it. And enforcing punishments helps. Like putting people in jail helps. Like if you get caught, like a lot of the the Facebook stuff that they've been fined for in America, they got like a $5 billion fine. All right, it's the biggest fine ever for in not adhering to privacy regulations. But nothing's going to change until someone goes to jail for it. Yeah. In Germany, people went to jail for the Volkswagen diesel scandal, and you've seen the industry take that very seriously. I mean, Volkswagen are making such massive investments into electric cars because they don't want to go to jail. Yeah. Whereas in Facebook, they're not scared of going to jail. There has to be real consequences for what happens to go wrong. And I think if you locked up a few tech executives, suddenly the industry would go, shit, all right, we have to actually adhere to these laws and we have to consider what the wider consequences of what we do rather than just we do this, we make money, we pay a fine. That's just part of doing business. I think more people should go to jail for abusing the society's goodwill like that, and that doesn't happen for white collar crime. It mostly happens for people who are like hurting others or for theft. Like even like the wage theft. Like people who work in restaurants work so hard and their boss doesn't pay them properly. The boss should go to jail for that, not just be fined. Yeah. Then suddenly people will start paying properly. If you've got the risk of going to jail, you're not going to fuck around and take the risk. You're going to pay properly, and that's what needs to be done because people are not taking it seriously enough.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, look, I think technology is obviously not going anywhere unless we get hit by an asteroid.
Now, like I said, you can't take technology back. Once it's out there, you're stuck with it.
Yeah.
You can try and mold it and change it, but it's definitely not going anywhere.
Absolutely. And I think there's some really amazing technology that's going to make the world a lot better. The clean meat revolution, I think, will be one of the most fascinating things that'll happen in our lifetimes. And I think it's going to get rid of the emissions from animal agriculture.
From livestock,
it's going to get rid of the thing that in 100 years we'll look back on and say we were savages, and that's cruelty to animals, and it's going to get rid of, it's going to give back 1/3 of the world's land, really. Because what will happen is, because of economies of scale and the way that meat production will work in 20 years' time, everyone is already signing on to become clean meat, you know. Memphis Meats or Tyson Meats, or whatever it was, the biggest meat provider. No, Tyson Meats, I think. He's already signed up to do over the next 10 years to, you know, start producing all their meat in meat breweries and so forth. And that, you know, is incredibly fascinating and awesome for the future. And, you know, population will continue to rise, but then it'll fall. Everything is showing from like birth rates are way below replacement rates in most of the world. So, you know, I think that in 100 years' time, it could look like a shitload of progress, a shitload of in technology, a shitload less people on the planet, a shitload more sustainable, and then technology probably is pretty exciting for a sustainable future. But yeah, and a happy future. Really, you just want the planet to be happy and the people to be happy, and technology can either fuck it up for us or it can save it for us at this point.
Yeah, and that's why technology is so interesting to so many people, because that either or is like, that's what makes it exciting.
Definitely is exciting. All right. So what about you, Anthony? So your future, like what's the future look like for you? Where do you want to be in you know, 5 years, 10 years time?
Hopefully keep doing what I'm doing now with a bit more money. Like I'm pretty happy doing what I'm doing. I'm quite lucky to have what I have. I don't think it's even skill so much, it's just pure luck. Right place, right time,
cool.
The right background.
Sure, there's a little bit of skill involved, mate.
A little bit, but mostly I think it's luck, and I'm very lucky to have what I have. So I'm pretty happy to keep doing what I do.
That's great. All right, so before we wrap it up, where can people find you? So anything you want to plug, people, I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in everything we talked about today. So
thesizzle.com.au, and you can sign up for a free trial of the newsletter. Every week there's a free condensed version of what I do every day. And if you like it, you can go to a daily newsletter. So every afternoon, when I finish this, I'm going to go home and write it. And for $5 a month, and get tech news sent to you. And also I'm on Twitter, Decryption. That's my username there. That's why I kind of do most of my social media there. And that's the best place to catch up with what I do.
Cool. Well, far out. Thanks for coming on the show, Anthony. Absolute ripper of a show.
Thank you for having me. Chat about very, very broad topics.
No, it was great. I really enjoyed it. So that's it from us, and that's a wrap.